Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to wait just a few seconds to get started as people find the link in their email to join us for the webinar today. So welcome, and we'll get started in just a second. All right, looks like lots of people are filtering in. This is great. Let's go ahead and kick things off. So welcome everyone to the event 2 of our webinar series around organizational structures. Today we have a really exciting speaker with us. And we're going to be talking about the #1 reason that analytics efforts don't pay off. This is going to be maybe a little bit different than what you typically hear on some of these webinars. So I hope you tune in and you think of questions along the way and take advantage of the fact that we have Lori Silverman here with us that you can interact with through the Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started. A couple of administrative things before we jump into the fun discussion. So as far as the agenda goes, we're going to do some quick intros. I'll talk about the sponsor for our webinar series a little bit, and then we'll introduce Lori. And then we're going to get into a 50-minute discussion. Basically, Lori and I are going to have a really interesting conversation, and we want you to engage throughout. So as you start to think of questions, like I said, please throw it in the Q&A, and we will get to those questions throughout as we can. And then the last couple of minutes, we'll close things out. I'll tell you how to get the recording and talk about some upcoming events that we've got. So a little bit about this series. So this series is essentially is one of our free virtual series that we do every quarter. So the series usually comes in 6 different events. We have them every other week. And they usually go along a particular theme. So this theme is around organizational structures. And today we're going to be talking about culture and organizational change. The first series that we had, the first event of this series that we had talked about different roles in the technical analytics organization. And today is a little bit more of kind of a mindset shift topic. So I'm really looking forward to this topic. Like I said, you can join us every other Wednesday for this particular series. A little bit about women in analytics. If you are new to our organization, our mission is to increase the visibility of women making an impact in the analytics space. So we have a platform for women to lead the conversations around advancements of analytical research, development, and applications. We also have a membership platform that you can join us as well in a Slack group. Over 1,000 people on it. So if you want to join the conversation, feel free to head to our website and get the link for the Slack group there. Just a big shout out and thank you to Hex. Hex is our sponsor for this webinar series. So all 6 events, they are a data workspace for teams. If you're interested in checking out their product, you can go to their website. And then a few webinar tips. So if you're having audio issues, you obviously can't hear me right now, but feel free to email us. I'll be tracking that to make sure that we can get everybody situated. And like I said, if you have questions, please ask away. We want this to be super engaging and interactive with our attendees. And like I said, please take advantage of the fact that we have Lori with us and that you can ask her questions. And finally, I want to introduce Lori Silverman. So our speaker today is Lori. Her and I have been chatting over the last several weeks about today's webinar. And in some ways, she's kind of like us, right? On the analytics side, she's managed statisticians and several organizations who are attempting to help organizations make better use of their data. And she's facilitated numerous functional teams trying to find insights in their data. And she's, on the other hand, she's kind of not like us at the same time, because she has which is exactly why we have her in the event today. For 40 years, she has consulted across 25 industries, helping C-suite leaders fully transform their enterprises, which means a lot of culture change. And that is her sweet spot. She teaches master's level courses in organizational development and strategic thinking for Golden Gate University, and both of which she believes are absolutely critical for us to learn. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So to kick things off, so welcome, Lori. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And to kick things off, I want to set a little bit of a storyline so we can orient everybody who's listening in to the webinar. So my background is a little bit more technical. I'm usually a part of analytics organizations, and lately, because I just recently started my own company last year, I'm helping a lot of organizations try to democratize some of these capabilities across their company. And when we think about analytics and analytics functions, we typically think about their own kind of departments. You know, we have the chief data offices that exist inside of an organization. We have data science teams. We have product owners of analytics solutions. We have IT. IT usually helps create a lot of the technical capabilities. So we usually think about analytics in the sense of it being its own kind of function within an organization instead of embedded. And I want you to kind of talk about why that is, what you've experienced is a little bit different than that.
Well, I want to harken back to an experience I had when I was 33 years old. I was working for 3 operating companies at Chevron, and we were getting a tremendous amount of success with getting those particular units to use data throughout every single business function. In fact, we had transformed their organizations. And so the chairman of the board decided to call a meeting with his top 52 executives. And he said, you, Ms. Silverman, are going to present to us, and you're going to tell us why what you're doing is different. Because I'm going to tell you, my other operating companies are wildly unsuccessful in this initiative. And there's lots of other consultants who are coming along. And as I was sharing with him, and he was seated probably no more than 10 feet in front of me. So imagine me on a stage and he's sitting like right here and everybody else is behind him. And as I was presenting, he all of a sudden stopped me and he said, oh my gosh, I get it. He said, we have to shift what we're doing from add-on work to the way we do business. And what you've done in these operating companies is instead of making it like its own fiefdom, its own area, which by the way is problematic. And so some of you are probably going, well, wait a minute, Lori, this is what we've been told to do. Unfortunately, the first thing you do is if you go in, and I know there are some people who've emailed me about ready to stand up organizations like you've described. If you immediately go in without canvassing the organization and understanding what we call organizational architecture and set up a function, what you're doing is unwittingly the opposite of what you want, because you're taking away responsibility and accountability from the executives. And they can go, done. I don't need to be concerned about this. This group will handle it. It doesn't need to be on my plate, which is exactly what we don't want. And so when he saw this, he said, how do we make this a part of everyday business? How do we integrate this into the DNA of the enterprise? And that became his mainstay. And so he said that to all of his executives. We need to shift how we're going about doing this. And that's what I think I encourage all of you to do. Now, the challenge is going to be this. You have to take on the mindset and the thinking of a C-suite leader all the time. Now that's a small shift, because I'm going to talk about a bigger shift if we get to it later on. But you have to start thinking like a business leader day in and day out. And I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but New Vantage Partners has been for the last 10 years. This is their last report, their 2021 report. They've been doing for 10 years kind of a canvassing of CEOs to say, how are things going in this particular arena? And here's my concern for all of you. Let me just kind of read a few things that they've said for this year, because this is year number 10. Cultural change seems a more significant barrier to long-term success. Over the years we've conducted this study, we've commented on the challenges. This year's findings exhibit that challenge to an even greater degree. That's really sad, because we say we've been doing this for 10 years and they're saying, no, this ain't working. And it says, all questions relating to long-term progress of corporate data initiatives exhibited declines from 2019 and 2020 levels, a disappointing development. And then they go on to say, we have noted several senior data leaders who are now emphasizing the creation of data-driven cultures, but we don't see enough of them, and we're not sure their efforts in that direction are sufficient. So, what is this really telling us? And this is my fear. So let me give you an example from a conversation I had in London in 2018. I had interviewed a gentleman prior to a keynote address that I was to give, and then I happened to meet him on site. And we were joking about functions and standing up analytics functions. And I said, oh, it probably started in your business, which was oil and gas, with one person, right? We'll bring in one person because, hey, this is the bright, shiny object. And then that person says after a month or two, I can't do this by myself. I need a few other people. So they say, sure, we'll up your budget. We'll give you a few more people. And then those people say, but we can't do it by ourselves. We have to specialize. And we need to have specialty functions within our particular group. And of course, then they try to create these specializations that are going on. And before you know it, I mean, I've talked to people who have 70, 80, 100 people in these functions. And he said, yeah, over 100 people. I said, so what's the rest of the story? Now, mind you, this was 2018. He said, we're dismantling it. And therein lies your challenge. If you go in and you set up a function permanently before ever doing all of the different data collection I'm going to encourage you to do, then you are left with a couple of things. One is people saying, I don't have to be concerned about this. And the second thing is the house of cards can come tumbling down upon you when you don't give out the sorts of results that people are seeking. Now, some people say, well, the way around this is to do a lot of demonstration projects. Lori, that's the way we'll do it. We'll just like have project after project and we'll show them that this works. I don't know of any organization, I've been doing transformation for decades. I don't know of any organization who has taken a projectized approach to anything, and that has caused a capability or a competency to be embedded into the DNA of the culture and the enterprise.
I love that because I think a lot of people can resonate with this. Like we've all seen the articles that are like the hub and spoke model, right? So you create this centralized hub. This is where you develop the capabilities. And then you've got these spokes that are kind of embedded in these different business units. And the hub is kind of seen as like a centralized consulting group, right? That other organizations can use as kind of consultants. And they can go and use those resources and have them build models or dashboards or whatever. And oftentimes, and I know everyone on the call is seeing these statistics, why so many data projects are failing and analytics projects are failing. I think it's like 80% of data and analytics projects fail.
Right.
And it's primarily because they're not embedded. We're not integrating these solutions in the decision flow and the decision process of these different business functions. And on top of that, everyone's like freaking out about data quality. Well, it's mainly because, again, it's not ingrained in those departments. They have no incentive.
Yeah, but you're still talking at the level of a project.
Right.
I'm not talking at the level of a project. I'm saying, what's your transformation plan? See, people, start out by saying, oh, we need a data governance plan. We need a data strategy plan. We need a this plan. We need a that plan. And nobody's creating. I've only talked to one guy as recently as this morning who said to me, yes, we are creating a transformation plan. And then I said to him, are you involving someone with an organization development background and a strategy background in the development of that plan? Because that's the expertise that I hold. And he said, yes, and the resources internal, and it's really hard work. That's what I'm talking about. So all of you what you're doing is you're jumping into the doing of the work without the planning. But on the data side, you tell us as the business, oh, but you got to do a lot of planning. So I'm saying to you, stop, time out, because here's kind of what you're doing. And what I want you to do on a piece of paper is draw 3 boxes, one on top of the other. So it's going to kind of look, I'm going to draw it in front of me. Then I'll put it up and then I'll show you what's going on. So you're like, so draw this. And then in the top box, what I want you to write is the word artifacts. This is where you're all working, artifacts. We're just going to start doing, we're going to jump into it. But Edgar Schein said to us, oh, no. There are 2 levels below this, and they go up like this. You don't work at the level of artifacts if you want to change culture. You work way down here. And what's down here are fundamental assumptions about the way we run the business. And what is the stumbling block for everyone is that there hasn't been any sort of organizational assessment to say, here's our values and beliefs. Let me just write that in. So if I hold this up, people can see it. We have values and beliefs as an organization, but under that are all these assumptions about people, how we operate, what's going on, what's the business environment about. This is what has to change here. And if all you're doing is working up here and you don't know how to access this, ain't nothing going to change. It's going to be like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. And so what you see happening is one of two things. Either people play musical chairs, which is what I've been watching on LinkedIn for the past couple of weeks. Everybody's changing jobs. They last for about 18 to 24 months. And then they go on to another organization. Not necessarily going on because they've had success, but, oh, I've been stopped. I've hit a brick wall where I am, so I'm going to go try going someplace else. But you're going to hit the brick wall again anyways, because you're missing the fundamental plan to help guide you about whether or not you should even have a hub and spoke model. Like, how do you know? How do you know that that's the right way to organize? How do you know that that's what will best serve the business? You know, I mean, I think that that's a real challenge. And so part of what folks like me do in a change impact assessment or an organizational architecture assessment is to talk about what are the assumptions that are running the business today. And if we were to bring in an analytics, well, what you all call an analytics mindset, I'm going to call it something different, then what's the mindset shift that needs to happen here? Like, what assumptions need to go away? What need to be added? What need to be reinforced or enhanced? Because chances are, you know, we're not operating from this mentality. But you do have another challenge on top of this that you and I've talked about. I think in one of your clients, you've even mentioned this. How many initiatives are going on at your current clients right now? Like, is it just like we're trying to do analytics?
Yeah, so there's initiatives, there's tons of projects going on at my customers that have to do, they're somewhat related to analytics, but then there's a ton of analytics initiatives. Like, we want to answer these questions, create a dashboard for us, build a model for us. There's a lot.
Right, but you in your clients, there's probably a customer journey kind of initiative going on. I know in lots of organizations, Agile is still really big. So I want you to think even bigger. I want you to think organization-wide. You're not the only thing on a leader's agenda. You have got to start. If nobody else is doing this in your organization, I encourage you to do it. And I'll tell you why in just a second. Make a list of every major initiative that your organization is trying to implement right now, or ones that are on the docket for 3 to 6 months or 9 months from now, because you're one of them. We are not creating a data culture. That's not what we're doing. What we're trying to help the enterprise do is figure out, if they make all these changes with the culture that they now have, how do we embed all of these into the DNA of the enterprise, and how will that shift the way the organization looks, feels, smells like, tastes like, does their daily work? All of them have to integrate together. And so if nobody's thinking about that, I want you to be a business leader who's got this arrow coming here and this arrow coming here and this one coming here and this one coming here. And now you're trying to come from the top down, and it's like, it ain't going to work. No wonder it's not a priority, because nobody's linking these together to say, oh, if I can tell you what the whole looks like, and if I can help you to see that, then maybe that'll assist you in wanting to do what I'm encouraging.
We did get a question from the audience on the topic when you were drawing the boxes out. Someone said, what would be an example of an assumption in that scenario? Like a business assumption.
One would be, if I'm a leader, my intuition has always served me well. And you know what? They're not wrong. So if you do not have, so can I talk about a bigger shift that needs to be made? Because that'll kind of link to that. And that actually is a very good question, by the way. I don't think we should be focused on data. I think we in the field are focused on the wrong thing. We should be focused on decision-making. Because if you look at, and I've been since 2015, I've mapped out a very detailed process for collaborative data-informed decision-making. Like, what are all the steps to doing that? Data is the input. Why are we focused on the input? Executives don't care about the input. They care about the output. They care about the decision and the implementation of it. And we're all focused sitting here on the input. No wonder they're not concerned. We're not even speaking their language. You know?
It's such a good example of that too. Again, I've seen it at a lot of my customers. It's like, we think about it in terms of feasibility. Like, we know you're trying to make a decision as a business owner. We know that. And we're trying to help you make that decision. So in our head, we're like, okay, in order to make that decision, we have to have this type of intelligence. In order to have that type of intelligence, we need to have this kind of data, which means your team needs to be collecting high quality data. And so in our mind, we're like, please fix your process to collect this data or start collecting this type of data so that we can help you get those insights. And I think that's where that person then has to prioritize a change in the way they do business just to capture the data. And trying to convince them to prioritize that over, critical operations that they're focused on is really challenging.
Right, but here's an assumption. You're telling me that people in analytics are thinking, and I've worked on data quality projects, that the data has to be clean and perfect, right? And a single source of truth before we can make the decision. And the business is going, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't have to be that way. Yep. And guess what? It will never be that way.
Yep.
You are never. I remember prior to COVID, I was doing another keynote overseas, and there were a bunch of people talking about creating data marketplaces. Oh, we got to collect all this data. And I looked at them and I said, what are you going to do when the data decays? What are you going to do when the business fundamentals shift? And COVID came along, and guess what? Almost all that data became irrelevant. And I want you to think about the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars that people spent on doing that, and how well is it serving them today? It's not. And so I think we need to take, first of all, the first shift that we need to make in our own minds is that this is not about the data. This is about a couple things. And I would say to executives, and I've worked with groups of CEOs, and I say to them, what's the cost of making a wrong decision? Number two, what's the cost of making a right decision and not fully implementing it? And that's what you've been talking about. But I'm focused on the decision. I'm not talking to them about the data. If you can't make this first shift in terms of your thinking, then you're not talking their language. I had someone say to me one time, a gentleman in Venezuela, he said, okay, if I believe what you're saying, Ms. Silverman, is very polite, then what's the job of a CDO? And I went to bed that night, and I woke up the next morning and I went, wrong D word. It's not chief data officer, it's chief decision officer. Now, I'm not wanting you to change it in your organizations. I'm wanting you to shift the mindset. Because if we only focus on the data, we're only focused on the input to decisioning. We're not focused on the back end, which is the usage and the value and the profitability and the revenue stream. And if we believe what new Vantage Partners is telling us, that's one of the cultural impediments and barriers, is that we haven't made that shift in our practice. But to me, when we create a transformation plan, that's part of what we need to start talking about, which is what is the real reason that we're doing this in organizations?
Well, we started, and what's interesting too, is I talk a lot about success metrics for these programs, right? So we're going to stand up our own data and analytics group, program, whatever. So when we talk about success metrics, a lot of people, because it's easy to track, immediately go towards how many dashboards have we built? How many models are deployed in production? How, you know what I mean? That becomes their kind of throughput success metric. And it just shows the difference in mentality there, because then you create this kind of centralized development process. And trust me, I've been there. I've been in teams like where that was our KPI. And it's hard because how do you relate any of that up to what actually matters in the business? And we're seeing a lot of low usage solutions being built because we're not thinking through impact and adoption and decision processes that those things are being inserted into.
Well, but you're not thinking about how a business runs. So let me draw a different diagram. And these are very simple models. And by the way, I show these to executives all the time to try to create some common language around this. Okay, in an organization, there's a mission and vision. It sounds real simple, right? Mission is what are we collectively paid to do and for whom? And vision, the way I use it when I do strategic thinking work or strategic planning, is in the eyes of future consumers, what do we need to become? Okay, now on this side of the business, are business processes. There should be. We've had some challenges with that because technology is trying to tell us that instead of having mapped business processes, the technology will become the process or become the language. I mean, it's kind of a crazy thing that's going on right now. But every single process has measures. Every single process has outcome measures, process measures, all of those. What are you doing to attach to those? They're all dashboards over here. You don't need to create your own dashboards. It's how do I help you tweak these metrics that are important to you in this business flow or in the overall business flow. And oh, by the way, it's not about I said, I have never seen a dashboard yet. And I was at the very first Balanced Scorecard conference. So that takes me back to like the 1990s. I went with a client. I've never seen a dashboard where the actual decision to be made or the problem to be solved is on the dashboard. And it tells us what these metrics are informing us about. I've never seen one. So if someone has one, let me know. Because that's the disconnect even at the project level that you're talking about with those KPIs. Now, on the vision side of the business, if I've got some breakthrough strategies that we're working on, there are some metrics over here too. You can help tweak those too. But you have to understand the core of the business and how the business operates. It's not about creating your own metrics for whether or not, you've helped people create 50 dashboards, you've done 10 AI projects or whatever. That doesn't tell me anything.
Yeah, it's a vanity metric is what it becomes, something that people can use to talk about how much they're advancing in a particular space, which is a popular thing to do. And a lot of people they like to promote that, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, it drives behaviors. And to your point, the hard thing is too, I've encountered this personally, and I've also heard lots of people who are in analytics functions express frustration of the business not being able to properly articulate what their KPIs are. So what are we optimizing to? And they have a hard time understanding, I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I can't articulate what KPI or metric would be important for me to be able to measure that from a business perspective.
Well, I don't know. I've been doing that work for a very long time. As soon as you go down to the level of business processes, it becomes very easy to pick out variables. And the variables then are which ones do you want to measure? I like to measure in process variables. Those become my KPIs because they tell me before my outcomes what it is that's going to go wrong. Again, you have to connect back to the business from the core. People in analytics say, well, we have to connect to strategy. And I'm like, no, not strategy. The business, how the business operates. Now, if your business started to call it the customer journey map, I don't care what you use. Look at the different steps within the customer journey map. What are the variables in each of those steps? And then what are the KPIs to go with that? Attach your work to that. And you have to be with the core of where the business is today. If you're sitting out here and you're trying to do your own stuff over here, that this business over here should buy. They should buy it. They should see this as important. That ain't going to work because they don't care. They've operated before you and they'll operate after you. It's like, how do you really say to them, how can I help you to make better decisions? Where to me, it's like, if I were starting out, this is me. If I were starting out doing this and someone had hired me in an organization to stand up a function, the first thing I'd say to them is what I'm going to do for the first couple of weeks is I'm going to go interview every single business leader. Every leader at all levels. If you don't want me to, that's fine, but this is what I want to do. And what I want to do is I want to ask them a couple of questions. I want to ask them like, what sorts of decisions are routine decisions within your group that you make every single day? Because there's a ton of them when it comes to getting the work out. And how well are those decisions being made? What sorts of inputs are you using to making those decisions? It could be what sorts of upcoming decisions do you need to make that are pretty big? And how do you plan on making those? What do you plan on using as inputs to that? And then it could be what sorts of chronic problems have you been having that you've never been able to solve? Because that's where the sweet spot is for a lot of organizations. Can I help you overcome one of those chronic issues? And there are decisions within it that as well. And then how can I support you in doing that? But if you listen to me, I didn't say the word data. I want to talk to you about how you're running your business and what do you need to run your business better and what sorts of barriers and challenges you're having related to decision-making, because that's really where data is the input to. I'm just making it simple here. And then how can I help to assist you with that? What can I do to help? Now, I'm probably not going to offer the help right there because I'm collecting the input, but they're going to start to say, well, here's where you might be able to help. Or I might even tease them and say, here's how I think I could help in the future. Would that be of interest to you?
I got another question from the audience.
Yeah, what if they're set in their ways?
Yes, what if they're set in their ways?
Well, I don't know what set in their ways means. I have worked with leaders like this who are extremely dogmatic. So what I'm going to be doing at the same time as this is I'm going to create a stakeholder sheet with the name of all of these business leaders. And now I'm going to start to assess the stakeholders. How receptive are they to change? I might say to them, well, how do you make decisions today? Because I have to get inside their mind. Why am I wanting to get inside their mind? And it has to do with what's over here. What am I trying to understand? Their own personal assumptions. And what are the sorts of things that are going to prevent them from wanting to do this work? So I just ask them, how do you go about making decisions today? Now, I'm not saying I'm trying to change them. But if they tell me that they've been having issues with making decisions, I might say to them, if I could help you make that decision, I don't know what words I'd use because I'd need something specific, but a wee bit better. If I could help you ratchet that number up just a little bit, would that be of interest to you? I'm not doing it. I'm offering to do it because what I'm trying to figure out is how much I can stretch them and how much capacity there is for them to see the world in a new and different way. There will always be a few, not a lot. There'll be a few leaders who say, I'm not interested, I don't want it. And I'm like, okay, I get it. But then I'll look at their employee group and see if there's someone within that employee group who has an interest, because there always is one person. And that's going to be my connection to that function then. Because I might say, well, who in your group, does anybody help you with this stuff? Like, is anybody like, helping you to get the inputs to making these decisions today? Oh yeah, so-and-so over here, that's their full-time job. Okay, do you mind if I go talk with them? Because there's still something going on that will help you to shift that person's thinking. But most people don't realize, and I don't talk about this, but my first graduate degree is in counseling. And one of the things as a therapist that we talk about, and I do this with executives and coaching, I don't start in front of them. I start behind them or next to them. Usually next to them, whispering in their ear in the hopes that they will take a step forward. Sometimes I step back to hold their back because they want to back up. And I'll kind of like just push them very gently forward a little bit and then whisper in their ear. That's the level of relationship you need to start forming with leaders within your enterprise. If you do not know people and you do not know them well, then you're going to have a problem, because the number one, you tell me, what do you think the number one tool of influence is?
It's a good question.
One tool of influence is likability.
Oh,
does
interesting.
someone like me? Not do they respect me? Do they like me? And if they like me, then I can say to them, humor me, because I'm not going to do wrong by you. Humor me. Just try this. And they will. They will. I mean, I have done interesting things. I've had executives. I mean, you might think it's crazy with CEOs. I pinky swear with them. I have them write things on a piece of paper. I promise to listen to Lori just this once. I'm asking you to do it once, but without the relationship. So if you're hiding, behind in your home, which is unfortunate right now for a lot of people with COVID, right? I mean, I think that we're not going to see major transformation efforts really gain steam until people come back to the workplace. I'm sorry to say that, but there's something about human interaction that's necessary. But you've got to get to know people as human beings. And we have another question, right, that came in?
Yes, we do. So this one's around team development question, which is actually, this is a very common question. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this, Lori. For everybody in the audience, the question is, to integrate analytics within the business, would you recommend upskilling business folks to develop an analytical mindset, or analytics folks to learn the business?
The latter. Analytics folks to learn the business. What you need to be teaching everyone in a business is how to make better decisions. It's not about how to use data. Once you teach them how to make better decisions, they will, I guarantee this, I guarantee it. And I've heard other analytics leaders talk about this, not a lot, but a few. You have to create the pull. You can't be the push. You can't be the push. If I teach you how to make better decisions and a method for doing that collaboratively with other people, and I make it really simple, like we call our method Smarter, so people can remember it. And I show you how to do that simply. People start coming to me and saying, you know, I realize our data is it's not clean. It's not good data. I realize we don't have the right data. I realize now they're coming to us saying, I want to learn, versus you pushing it on them. You've got to create a pull system where people say, I want this. And so to me, it's teaching business folks how analytics folks how to do business, or if I were setting up an analytics group, and if that were warranted, which I don't know if it is, I'd be taking business folks and teaching them analytics so they understood the business. Because this whole thing about an analytics translator and creating one more job description for one more person to do something, really? Like how detailed do you want to make this? It's a lot simpler than we're making it look in organizations.
I wonder if and I know what you're saying, and that might not be, and interestingly enough, it might not be a super popular opinion too, because we're seeing a lot of these roles being created, like the citizen data scientist, right? Like these different roles that are being created and popularized. And I think some people are seeing some success in having those roles around. And I wonder what the biggest pushback is on, okay, you're in the business, you're a business leader, you're in a business function. Now we're going to come teach you basic statistics, or we're going to come teach you how to interpret this.
But I've been there. I've done that. It don't work. I think, and I know that everybody's trying to make it look like it works. All the technology companies are saying, oh, it works. There are consultants out there saying, oh, it works. They're talking about projects. We're talking about embedding the capability into the DNA of the enterprise. I'm not talking about doing projects. And I think that that's a really key distinction here. We're also not talking about change management, because that's a project phrase. Oh, we'll do change management on the project. Oh, communication, stakeholder analysis, and training. Whoopee. I'm talking about organizational change management, and that's transformation, and that's wildly different. We have another question, right? Is it
yes,
based
we
on
do.
size?
I love the questions coming in. Keep them coming. Wow, more. I love this.
Yeah, and we still have a few things we want to cover too.
I know. Well, you mentioned change management. Before we get to some of these questions, I just want to touch on this topic, because you mentioned change management, and this is a piece that I think a lot of organizations are starting to try to formally support. Yeah. Because they're thinking it's a change management problem, right? And so they're starting to get some of their analytics folks and some of their business folks trained in formalized like change management. So is that something you're suggesting people do, or what's your opinion on that function?
You need to learn organization development, and you need to learn how to do organizational level change.
What's the difference for people that want to know?
People who've been learning change management, especially those who've gone like to pro-site training, are only learning individual change management. They're not learning how to change enterprises. How to change an enterprise is a completely different animal. You're not going to talk about the culture framework that I shared with you. You're not going to talk about mission and vision attaching to business processes. That's not what you're going to be talking about in those sorts of courses. You're going to be talking about individual levels of resistance and, how do I help to create a communications plan or a training plan? Yeah, that's nice, but that's not where we are right now. What we're trying to do is we're trying to take this change equation, and we're trying to figure out, and let me tell you what the letters mean, and then we can briefly explain this and get to the question. C stands for change. D stands for dissatisfaction with the status quo. Now, where this is a big issue, put underneath it pain and urgency. You might have a lot of pain in your organization to make better decisions, and a lot of urgency. And you ain't going anywhere. This is a multiplicative equation. If this is 0, you're going nowhere. Seriously. Then what's the vision of the change? And what I mean by the vision of the change is, even if we just took how do we embed better decision making into the organization? How do we help it to become more intelligent? There's a story, a narrative story to be told about, in a year or 2 years, when this is completely finished, what will the enterprise sound like, look like, feel like, taste like, from the view of a single character? Write me a story about a character and the challenges that they've had and the successes they're having today, if we were to do what you're wanting us to do. Because story, narrative story as a tool, and I've written 3 books in this area, so I have a little bit of background. If you look at the brain research, data attaches to trying to persuade people with data does not work, because most people are distracted, they don't care, they don't have an interest, they got a million other things on their plate. If you really want to influence, and persuasion and influence is different. With influence, you have to attach to the unconscious brain, and stories are the only narrative tool we know that actually helps people to shift based on a story. And so I just kind of want to leave that as an aside for people, but that's this V. What does this story like? And then this is first steps based upon what we've learned here. And this is where the F for me is where I do what I call an organizational architecture assessment, where we go out and we say, okay, I know this stuff. I've been talking to the business leaders. I've got a feel for pain and urgency about what's going on here. Here's the story based on this, because I could even say to them, one of my questions could be to them, if I could help you make better decisions, more informed decisions, how would that change how your business operates? Or how does it change how the piece of your business operates? Start integrating that into this story. Then when I go to do my first steps is to take this story. This is my benchmark. This is my baseline. This is what we want. And I can assess how close are we to that from each different part of the organization. Okay, strategy. How does strategy butt up against that story? Are we strategically moving in the right direction? Does the business strategy even talk about this? Business processes, what's the relationship between that? If I look at all management and leadership practices, like especially those coming out of HR, job descriptions, other things, how close or how far are we away from that story? And I can go around and do that for the totality of the enterprise. And then I can say, okay, based on this assessment, what are the first 2 or 3 or 4 steps we take? That's a prioritization. Instead of saying, oh, we need to stand up the business function, we need to go and do some demonstration projects, and we're just gonna, hopefully along the way, we're gonna be able to embed the results in the business, but then I hit up against the cultural impediments and I can't get anywhere with those, and then we really don't go anywhere, and then people say, what's the value? And we say, well, we need more people in our function. Or we need better technology, or we need better data. No, that's not the case. The business is going to operate. But you've got to understand how to do each of those different types of assessments in order, and then say, what's the implication of all of this overall? So that's just, and I can come back to that if you want. But
yeah, that's fantastic. I feel like there's not a lot of thought, typically from my experience, around those particular concepts. It really does just start with what roles do we need to hire? What capabilities do we need to have exist?
Well, one aspect of an organization architecture assessment is to assess against the infrastructure. That's the organizational structure, but that's just one piece. One piece of an OA assessment is to look at all the things that data folks look at now, data strategy, data governance, and all those things, but that's just one piece. If you don't take this bigger picture piece, and you might be saying, but Lori, that's not my job. I'm a data analyst. That I didn't sign up for this, or I'm a BA, or I'm just doing data visualization. Why should I take this work on? You don't have to. But I can tell you, having worked in a hospital, the way I got to where I am today is because I used to work in healthcare many moons ago. And I can tell you, it's possible for a single person to change an organization. It's possible. It don't matter where you're sitting in that organization. You can strategize correctly, and you can start to do this work and bring in kindred spirits. Go find those people who are thinking similarly, form a community of practice, stealth community of practice. It doesn't even have to be above board. Things will start to happen. Things will start to shift.
So we did get a question. I want to try to get to some of these audience questions too about whether or not the conversation changes based on the size of the organization. So if you're in a very small, lean company, with a few analytics resources versus a large enterprise organization. So if that conversation is different, how is it different?
The conversation isn't different. It's just easier. I always say it's easiest to do this if I'm talking about number of people, about 1,200 people or less is going to be the easiest because you have access to all the people fairly easily. When I've worked in, I've done a full transformation of an organization that was 1 million people. 1 million, me as a consultant, one consultant, and the enterprise. I want you to hear that. One consultant, the enterprise. Because it was all about the organizational's internal resources. We didn't set up a function to do something, and it was in a different area, by the way. But I had to figure out how do I use what exists within the organization to get this to move through. And where do I find those people who are kindred spirits? And we found about 300. And those 300 were unbelievably powerful people. They were not, in terms of hierarchy, not at the top. They were just people in the middle and at the front line who were movers and shakers. So the conversation doesn't change, it's just scaled differently.
And we see a lot of these digital native companies embed that. That's a part of their culture. When they started out, they knew that's what they wanted to have as a foundational component of the company, which is why they're able to scale that so well. Because they have centralized groups to help support that, but it's ingrained in everybody they hire, in everybody making decisions. And I think that is the difference. That's that gap that we're seeing in some of these already established organizations.
Yeah, you have a little bit easier time, I think, if you're talking about from a startup perspective that starts up with that mindset about making better decisions, but somehow it gets lost as the organization grows. Because I spent Sunday, I was coaching a colleague of mine about this very thing. And this startup is doubling in size every year. And all of a sudden, politics is starting to come into play, right? I mean, that's all of the challenges of growing a business. And she saw a red flag and she wasn't going to do anything about it. And I said to her, you have to talk about it now. Because if you don't talk about it now, it's actually going to explode. So yes, it is easier up front, but it's not as an organization matures. And I know that even up front, I had some questions from people who I queried in advance who said to me, how do you do this in a traditional legacy sort of organization? Again, it's getting to know the people. You have got to figure out, for example, I did very few times in my career have I been embedded into an organization, but I was in one, and because it was outside of Boston, and I wanted to live outside of Boston for a couple of months, and it was absolutely delightful. And the people were amazing, amazing people. And as this particular program had been going on for quite some time. And one of the things that was an observation for me as a new project manager coming in, and there were 4 other project managers and a program director. I said, has any transformation in this enterprise ever been successful? This is a big legacy organization. And the program director said, that's a really interesting question. Let's go talk to people who've headed up major changes over the past couple of years. Not a one said they'd been successful. Not a one. We could pick up and cobble together little things that worked. And there were 2 guys I remember talking to. They're like, well, I think we came the closest to being successful. And as I said, well, if you had added these pieces, and I shared with them about doing how do I do a change impact assessment, or how do I do transformation or the change equation? They said, if we had those pieces, we probably could have gotten more traction. But we never, it's like, I asked a woman this yesterday. She said, well, we want to have a data focused organization. I said, what does that phrase mean? She said, I don't know. I said, well, why don't you go ask people what it means to them? Now, but I don't want to know what it means definition wise. I want to know what it means in terms of a vision story. Like, how are our lives going to be different? That's where the rubber hits the road. Because if I can write that story, and when I've done this with organizations and we show business leaders the story, this is what's uncanny. 9 times out of 10, they'll look at me and they'll go, that's not enough. I want more of this. And you're like, okay, You don't know what that means, but okay, you want more of this over here? Sure, I'll add that to the story. And someone will say, but I want more of this. Okay, so we'll beef up the story. And then we'll go, do you all agree that this is what you want? Yes. Okay, now let me show you what it's going to take to get you there. But you have to want this. This is what's going to get them, and enough pain and urgency. You need those components.
We got another question from the audience that says, how do you start the conversation when business leaders say they make data-driven decisions and they have a data culture, but they only collect data to prove a decision they've already made?
Well, you're talking about collaborative data-informed decision-making. We're not talking about culture. So let's step back for a second. In the framework that we've created in our first step, which is a setup step for talking about context, I actually am very direct with business leaders. Have you made the decision already? Yes or no? And if they say yes to me, I'll say, how certain are you of that decision? And if they say 1,000%, I say, I'm not doing the project for you.
Yep.
Not going to do it. Now, if they say to me, well, I'm like 80%, I'd say, okay, what are the other outcomes that could happen other than the outcome that you are so dead set on? Like, why are you 80%? What's that 20% like? And then we'll talk about whether or not it's worth me putting in the effort and the time. But if they've already made up their mind, the way I look at it is this: go do the implementation. If it backfires on you, we'll know sooner. But why should I spend a month or a couple of weeks or however long to get you this, and then you're going to ignore it on me? Now, I might come back and say, and I've done this with leaders over time, so I've said, humor me. If I take this on and you're already certain you know what the decision is, how willing, because of our relationship, are you to listen to what I have to share if I share it with you behind closed doors one-on-one? Because I'm not going to embarrass you publicly.
I think that's key. I think there's that trust component of being able to make your business leaders look good, because like there is a lot of friction between business leaders and analytics teams because there's a trust piece there. They're not trusting of what they're getting. Are you sure that's right? I'm about to go put my neck out on the line and make a decision based off of information you gave me, or information you gave me completely contradicts what I was going to go do, and I've been planning this already. It's a very delicate relationship.
Right, but what people are forgetting is a part of trust is, do I trust you? And do I trust the other people you've involved to do work on this? Because if I don't, I'm not going to listen, even if I know that that's the right thing to do. See, that's the human component from the culture piece that we keep forgetting. You've got to go build those relationships, because then you can use them. And I mean, I've had difficult conversations, absolutely, with people. I mean, about this. I mean, these are tough. You better learn how to have crucial conversations. Better learn how to deal with conflict. But I don't back down. But again, I'm not speaking the language of analytics. I only speak the language of the business. And I know statistics, and I know analytics, and I know narrative story, and I know data visualization. I know all these things, but that's not the language I talk in.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely key. And I know we're coming up towards the end of the hour, which is crazy. I wonder, could you help the audience paint that picture of like, what does, if you walked into an organization, you were like, they did this, they got it, they understood it, they did it right. What does that look like?
Well, technology is an enabler. It's not the be all and the end all. Meetings, people know how to work together. They all have, how can I explain this? They all have measurement systems in place. You can call them what you want, dashboards, whatever. But employees, even at the front line, all have measurement systems in place, and they understand it's real-time data, which is the big thing we're struggling with today. It's real-time data. They're making decisions real-time based on it. And They know how to make changes and improvements based on that to what's going on, and they know how to solve problems. Business leaders at the executive level, I've actually flow charted out the decision-making process for them that's related to executive decision-making. And we follow that path when we're making decisions. And we take in inputs from all different sources. And by the way, we don't ignore intuition. Intuition is a source of data. And we know how to combine that with the quantitative data in order to find insights, because that's really the key piece. And then we can talk about, well, what are the implications of those insights and where can that take us as a business? But it's a lot easier place to work because people have a different way of interfacing with each other. But the thing is we're not, the hard part is, yes, we know the data is not perfect. Yes, we know there's not a single source of truth. It's not like those things aren't being worked on in the background, but they're not the front and center. They're worked on based upon where the business needs to go.
It's funny because all these topics are really just kind of flipping everything upside down. Because
if you look at why I'm like out here by myself, right?
If you look at any of the conversations we typically have, it's about how many data engineers should I hire? How many, like there's all of these kind of tactical things I think we get sucked into. And they're good things to talk about because when we get to the execution point, those are conversations that need to be had. But this one always tends to be missing. So this is, I know we got a couple comments that this was a very refreshing conversation for people, and they're excited to see how the space transforms now that more conversations are happening like this.
Well, I think we need to become learned. If you don't have an organization development person in your business to start helping you, start looking for resources to assist you in this arena. Because no matter where you're at, even if you've built a function, you can still do all this work as a way of saying, are we really doing what's best in the best interest of the business as a whole? And how can we start to fill in these gaps where we are running into roadblocks? So it's always possible. Everyone who's here, feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn. That's where I like to have conversations with people. I'm happy to talk to you for half an hour if you want to get on a Zoom call or whatever and kind of talk this through for your business. Because I am so, as you know, I'm very indebted to the WIA for publishing a chapter on this in their book. So thank you. But I'm very indebted to you for bringing this front and center, because people are not. The sorts of background that I have, people are being dismissive of. And I don't think that we can be dismissive anymore. I've been kind of raising this for a few years now, and I'm very grateful that we've had a platform today to start talking about it, because I really think this is the start.
Oh yeah, and we're absolutely thrilled to have you as a part of our community. And Lori's talking about the Women in Analytics book called Analytics Interpreted. So if you haven't checked that out, it's available on Amazon. Definitely check that out. She's an author in one of the sections there. So thank you so much for being with us today. I know you've reached out to a lot of people to get their feedback on this topic, and I know this is a very popular topic, as she mentioned. Definitely let's all continue the conversation about this after this webinar. We may even give you guys a part 2, or you all a part 2 of this conversation as well. So Lori, thanks so much for being here. And I have a few announcements for everyone before everybody kind of mass exits. I mentioned the book, we have a membership program as well. So if you want to be more involved in the community, there's always that option. And we are doing an in-person conference at the end of July in Columbus, Ohio. So if you are interested in attending, I highly recommend you check that out. We have very limited seating left due to some of the space restrictions. So like I said, Lori, thank you so much. This was such a wonderful conversation, and I appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.